Sticking with the turmoil at number 10 now. Jeremy Hunt had hoped that his mini-budget U-turn would calm the country, his party and the markets. But by slashing the government's energy support scheme from 2 years to 6 months, households could face a cliff edge of soaring bills next year. Consumer champion Martin Lewis, he has warned that bills could rise by as much as 70%, with average households spending a staggering £5,000 a year on energy bills from April. And this is a bombshell, because on one hand, he's kind of done the right thing, because he'd given an open cheque that nobody knew. It hadn't been funded. It hadn't been costed. Nobody knows what's going to happen to global energy prices at all, particularly depending on the winter. And it was just an open-ended amount of money that, of course, the markets got spooked. Yeah. So, OK, so he's reined that in and the markets have responded favourably. But what he hasn't done is he hasn't started reassuring all of those people who are out there. And it's not just the very poorest in society, by the way. Most people budget. And when you put up something like your energy bill, which is a big cost, and you put it up by as much, you've got people up and down this country who are normally, you'd look at them and you go, you're quite well up. No, they're all thinking about, should I put my heating on? Should I save some money? Should I try and cut my costs? Should I get more blankets? You know, the most searched thing on the internet for purchasing, electric blankets and hot water bottles. So this is serious. But what I don't hear, and I wonder whether we really should be hearing it, is where is the discussion about essential energy and costs? Where is the proper discussion about how the regulator works? And where is the proper discussion about the future of where our energy comes from? You know, is he going to really grapple that?
Yeah, but why did they bring in this price cap? Because we were facing £5,000, maybe even £6,000 a year energy bills before the government acted. Why did they do this? They did this for this reason, that millions of people in this country literally would not have been able to afford their bills. So what kind of a situation are you in when energy companies are saying, here's your big bill, and the customers are saying, well, I just can't pay it? That's why the government moved. Now we find out that in April, they're going to get rid of all of that again, and we'll go back to £5,000 or £6,000 a year, and we'll be back in exactly the same predicament. Millions of people will literally not be able to pay the bills. So what Hunt has done is unacceptable.
Yeah. And one of the problems with what they're saying now, which is that after that cut-off is reached, it'll then be, you know, the vulnerable will be helped the most. And what that means is means tests. And what means tests means, in my book, very often is massively overcomplicated. So actually the process of actually administering that money ends up being expensive in itself, because you're trying to find the vulnerable people. And I know people say, if we give it to the rich, they'll be heating their swimming pools with taxpayers' money. But actually, sometimes that's better than trying to target something that then also you have people on a cliff edge who are right on the edge of getting that money and don't get it.
This was never meant to just help the vulnerable. This is a misnomer.
But it is going to now.
It was to help millions of people. Now, in April, it won't just be the vulnerable who need help. Millions of people will need help. And frankly, this price cap was necessary because people can't afford to pay £5,000 a year. So we're back to square one.
And do you not think it's time that people spoke about the energy crisis in real terms, about kilowatt hours, rather than an average household? No one here, I'm sure, could tell me what an average household is. 2,000. Your bills can go to £10,000 if you leave your heating on all the time. Do you not think that the public are smart enough to talk about energy like we talk about petrol? You wouldn't say, oh, petrol's gone up to, an average £40 per average car. You'd say it's £1.20 or whatever in exact terms.
But you've highlighted a real problem, and the real problem is that the regulator isn't doing their job, and they're not doing their job particularly. So, for example, you could switch off your heating, but you're still going to have hundreds of pounds to pay because they've allowed the daily standing charges for each energy that you have coming into your home to go up. They're not doing their job. They're asleep at the wheel.
We need the tools and the language in order to be able to fight our own fight, as well as against the regulators.
But he has said there's going to be... It will be replaced in April. So what I would hope is that by the time it gets to April, the people who need it the most are going to get the help. Because actually, I don't want to be paying my taxes for a swimming pool to be done. And if you've got a Maserati, maybe you can't have a Maserati because the bills are going up. The rich people can make those choices, but the poorest in society, they're the ones who need to be helped. And for me, I'd rather it be means tested and we just focus on that, because in the end, we're going to save more money for the country than we're spending.
But it isn't just about the poorest. It's about the middle income earners. It's about so many people.
But also, you were talking about people being scared, because all this talk about blackouts is now going to really frighten people. You're being told today that between 4 and 7 p.m. on really, really cold days, and that's a quote, the national grid might impose blackouts on the deepest, darkest evenings in January and February. And the reason for that, they're saying, is because there won't, the gas supply, and it comes back to your point, James, the gas supply just won't be big enough or good enough. But of course, then you think, well, are they just waving a red flag because they're trying to get the government to act?
I think there's an element of that, and I think what the government has been accused at before is not warning us of a problem before it happens. They have also said that it's really unlikely that that would happen. But I think we've also got a real energy problem, because we don't know what Vladimir Putin's going to do. We don't know what's going to happen across Europe. We don't know what the weather's going to be like. We know that if it's a relatively mild winter, we'll probably be OK. We also know that if it's a really cold winter, it's going to be very difficult. And let's also think it's not just about the poorest in society. Of course, that's important. It's also about the oldest in society who need to have their heating on all the time. They are really worried about this and turning off their heating unnecessarily.
And we haven't even discussed businesses, which is a whole other issue, the cost of keeping businesses going rather
Well, if they
than...
switch their lights off, perhaps we could use a little energy.
Yes.
A little less.